Lost Souls. The views and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Lost Soul podcast or the Vibes Broadcast Network.
Hey everybody, super excited to be here with you tonight. Again, this is Ben from Lost Souls, also lead investigator of Central Utah Paranormal. Today we have a bit of a different episode, so I wanted to get more personal with you guys and really let you know more about me. And I want to do this with as many of the members of our broadcasting network that I can. But to go ahead and get this started, again, my name is Ben. I grew up in Utah. I've lived here the majority of my life in different towns in Utah. I also lived in California for roughly 2 years. I lived in Sacramento, North Highlands, Rancho Cordova, Del Paso Heights, and Placerville, Lodi, and a couple spatterings of other places. But I am a metalhead. I grew up listening to any 80s, 70s rock that my dad had. Growing up, I only had one of those little red and blue Sony players with a little microphone, and I would steal my dad's cassette tapes and put them in there and blast them and run around the house singing to them. One of my favorite stories I love to hear my dad tell me, at least, was I got one of his AC/DC tapes. I'm pretty sure it was Highway to Hell. And I was running around the house with that playing and singing to it. And I could just feel my mother's knees dropping in the other room and praying for my eternal salvation. But it always made me laugh when I'd hear that from him. One of my other favorites when I was little was Meatloaf. Not the food, the artist. Not a lot of people are aware of him these days, but he had a song called Bat Out of Hell. It was my favorite. Still one of my very favorites. Some of my other hobbies include... A lot of my hobbies include music, I should say. I also play guitar. I can play a little drums. Some percussion, not a ton. I taught myself how to play piano when I was about 14. I love guitar. I have an acoustic Ibanez, and I absolutely love it. My mom bought it for me. Not quite 8 years ago, maybe, but it's one of my prized possessions. And my newest electric guitar is a LTD ESP 257. Basically all that means, the 257, it's a 7-string. I love playing it. It plays metal like nothing that you could ever believe. But I've had a lot of people ask me or comment on our Instagram page exactly what it was that got me started in the paranormal. And I actually started amateurly, I guess you could say, about 3 years ago. I did some experiments and things like that just to test communication with spirits. When I was in the learning process, I used a lot of different apps. One of my coworkers taught me how to use a pendulum to ask questions, and that was an amazing experience, because it's not something that your rational mind or even your skeptical mind wants to believe could work or be an option. So it's pretty awesome when you find out that it is, and you learn how to make that connection with your equipment that you use. But I officially formed Central Utah Paranormal with my partner Randy just over a year ago, when we officially started. But I have lots of different evidence from when I was doing it amateurly, where I was still able to catch a lot of awesome voices. But sorry, to go back to the question I've been getting, what got me started? I've had all kinds of different spiritual experiences from a young age. It's hard to just pick one to talk about. But growing up in Utah, I grew up in a very religious home. I still consider myself a very religious, spiritual person. I do my best to help other people when I can, but also one of my deepest desires is to learn more about basically the spirit world, the things that are around us. Can I help them? Do they need help? Is there a message they want relayed to a loved one? Is there something that they need? That, to me, is so important. But some of the other experiences that I had, I actually served a mission for my church. I don't talk about my religion very often because it is something very personal to me. It's something that I hold very sacred. But I preached the gospel, and that means many different things to different people, different religions, different sects. But it was an empowering experience, and it really helped me to grow closer to God and a greater knowledge of the Savior and Christ's atoning sacrifice for each and every one of us. And those are beliefs that I hold and share very dear to me. But I do not discriminate anyone for their beliefs, how they choose to worship God or the earth. I have many friends that are of different walks of life. I have a lot of friends that are Wiccan. I have friends that are Baptist, Catholic, born-again Christians, or are simply just very spiritual, and many that don't really know what they believe. And that's okay. It takes all of us to really make this world interesting. And I will never force my thoughts upon anyone. If anyone listening right now would ever like to have a one-on-one discussion with me, I would love that. I love learning about other people's beliefs, religions, thoughts, processes, how they think has always intrigued me a lot. But that's what it needs to be. It needs to be a discussion. It should never be discriminatory or rude in any way.
The views and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Lost Soul podcast or the Vibes Broadcast Network.
Hey guys, welcome back from the break. Super excited to have all of you here with us. We are just discussing religion and how my personal beliefs have helped me through my life. But like I said earlier, I'm willing to have any one-on-one discussions with anyone, but I keep the majority of my beliefs and the things that I hold dear to me very private. But I have no problem discussing them one-on-one. We had one particular experience that really pushed me deeper into the paranormal realm. This was a few years ago. My wife and I, it was our anniversary, and it was my turn to choose where we were going to go. And so I talked to her about the Queen Mary. I have been there before. I stayed there in, I believe it was about 2014 for a biology class. We were headed to Catalina Island, and we stayed there for the night before we caught our ferry the next morning. And a lot of the people that were there on my college trip were like, oh man, we had all this stuff happen, and oh man, like my stuff was moving in my room. And a lot of the people that were telling me the stories I didn't really believe. I felt like they were just hyping it up because they heard it was haunted, and so suddenly their room was haunted, and that was the only reason behind it. They really I didn't feel that the things that they were telling me were true, I guess you could say. But after a night of exploring the ship and everything, me and the guy I was rooming with at the time, like, we loved it, and we always talked about going back. So when I brought it up to my wife, I was like, it's rated like, I think it's the 6th most haunted place in the United States. And so, at first she was like, ooh, well, and I was like, I told her, like, I've been there before. I didn't feel anything. I didn't see anything, but it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's huge. You can explore this whole thing, and we can go on one of the tours. And so we thought, yes, this is awesome. And so I got it all scheduled, and I remember when we first got there, we went to one of the shops on the main floor. I believe it was on B deck was where we were staying. And it had a book of all of the different haunted experiences and stories from people that had stayed on the ship, and also those that had died and how they died and such in the different areas. So my wife's going through all the different stories, right? And we're getting to our room, and she's like, oh my gosh. And she points at the door across from ours, and that number's there. And so she starts, like, reading the story. And a guy basically murdered his wife in the room and then drowned his 2 little girls in the bathtub. And then he killed himself also in the same room. It's very dark. That is a lot of negative energy all in one spot, right? And so we kind of kidded about it. And anyways, when we got into our room, we noticed that they hadn't given us the right room for what I had paid. And if anyone has ever stayed on Queen Mary, if you pay for a good room, you're going to get that good room. You don't want to stay in something less than what you paid for any hotel. And so we called them, and they rearranged it and moved us down 1 or 2 more rooms, right? So that night, first night, about 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, I wake up to the sound of my wife. But she's saying my name, and I can just barely hear it, like it's a whisper. Just, Ben. And it wakes me up, and all of a sudden I just hear her take a big breath, just, and she was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I was like, what happened? She was like, I was being like suffocated. Something was on top of me. And so, I jump up, turn on all the lights, check the room. Door still padlocked. But I get into the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror and I notice 3 very large scratches across my chest. And I hurried and put a shirt on because I didn't want to scare my wife more than she already was. And as I sat down and talked to her after she had, collected herself, that was quite the experience for her. Probably one of her first experiences of that nature, especially. And she said, I thought you had gotten up and gone to the bathroom. Like when you, subconsciously, you're still asleep, but subconsciously you can feel what's going on around you. And she said she felt someone or something crawl up onto the bed and hold her down by the upper chest and the throat. And so the only thing we could think of was the story that we had read out of that book. If it was truly the husband, and he had come into our room and attacked her, being the woman, and then left upon me waking up and scratched me because he wasn't able to finish his job. Or, number 2, it was the pressure of the twins coming to the mother to lay on her for safety, running away from the father. And when I woke up, they ran away, being a male, and I was also attacked because I was the male and they were fleeing. Those are just 2 theories that I have. I have always wanted to go back there, and now, especially, I have more knowledge, I have a greater understanding, I have some equipment, I'm a lot better at recording evidence and taking notes, and, just things like that. I really wish that I could have that opportunity again. But after that experience, I went from being an amateur, just oh, that's cool, let's see what we can get, to let's see what's out there. Let's find what we can. Let's learn. Let's see if we can get some voices. Let's see if we can learn some stories. Let's learn how to communicate. How can we help people? How can we make this a part of our life? But at that time was when I really, really started getting back into it. I had some other people ask some other questions. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I wrote down some questions that I've gotten from other people on my Instagram page. But one was, why did you choose the name Central Utah Paranormal? It's kind of funny. I went through all kinds of different names when I was coming up with it. And some, if I was to ever change the name in the future or anything like that, I would still use. But I grew up in Central Utah. I have had lots of paranormal events happen to me here. Different things growing up. Whether you want to dive into UFO stories or paranormal stories or cryptid stories, I have had all of the above. And many, many, many people have had those same experiences here. So I stuck with Central Utah Paranormal. But I was trying to think of another story that I wanted to share. Some of these stories I haven't shared in full detail, so this is one of those one-stop opportunities, and I'm super excited to share them with you. And I will tell you more right after this break.
The views and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Lost Soul podcast or the Vibes Broadcast Network.
So we're going to jump right into story time. So, when I first started Central Utah Paranormal, I really tried to get a lot of evidence, like voices, whatever I could get. And I found I was really good mostly at communication, using dowsing rods, pendulums, spirit boxes, things of that nature in order to help me obtain the things that I needed. And since then, I've built my own version of the Huff portal box. I haven't given mine a specific name yet, but I changed up just a few things from the way Huff did it. It's still reverb with a noise gate, but I use some of my own guitar knowledge, I guess you could say, to help increase that even more and get some really awesome, really clear responses. But when I first started, I was using a few different apps, and I know a lot of people will say, oh, apps, you can't trust them, you can't use them, they're not going to give you proper evidence or answers. I have done hundreds of tests with many apps, and I trust Echovox, Paratech, and Necrophonic, and Voxbox is pretty good too. But on this particular night, I was using a Paratech, and upon asking my questions, I just had my digital recorder out, and I had my phone set on airplane mode, and was using the Paratech, and had it going. And so at the beginning of the recording, you'll hear Paratech loaded when it turns on, and it spouts off a name right off the beginning. And I was like, oh, okay, is there anyone here with me right now? And I just wait and listen. And then I ask another question, and I wait, and I listen. And I turn off my recorder and plug it into my laptop. And I use a program that's free called Audacity to check on, you can watch the wavelengths, and it really helps you to find when words are popping out. And so I noticed right after my first question, is anyone here with me right now? And right after that, there was maybe a 2-second really quick spike. And so I slowed it down, and I turned it way up. And way behind me, from what it sounds like on my recorder, you hear, I see you. And it gave me the biggest chills that I've ever had in my entire life. At that moment, I knew there was someone there. I was talking to someone. And at that moment, I didn't freeze, per se, but that was my first real EVP that I had caught by myself, and I couldn't wait to show it to other people. And anyone that has listened for EVPs, it's difficult to hear some. Some you really have to train your ears, especially if there's static or noise in the background. Audacity will let you get rid of some of that, but if you get rid of all of it, you will also lose the integrity of the voice that you obtained. But after that, me and Randy went out for our first ever big investigation that we had planned, which was at Fort Deseret right here in Central Utah. I mean, it's maybe 45 minutes from my house. It's not bad at all. And we get out there at dark, and there's no one else out there. It's just all you could hear was like grasshoppers, crickets, and the breeze. it was a beautiful experience. And we had gotten, Randy had just gotten his very first SB11, and we were so excited to set it up. So while he set that up, or was getting it ready with the channel sweeps, I set up my periscope and about 3 motion sensor lights, and my EMF reader, just everything. Just took temperatures, walked around, see if I could pick up any spikes, and come back and we start having our conversation. And it only took minutes. Randy is the king of communication. He does it so well, and spirits respond to him in a quick manner because he is an inviting person. He's a kind person. He just has that aura about him. And he said something to the likely of, we're here to talk to you. We're friends. We're not here to hurt you. And the clearest woman's voice comes through. And this was just on static. You're here. And Randy points at the machine. He's like, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah, I think it said you're here. And he's like, yeah, I think it did too. And I said, yeah, we're here. We're just here to visit with you and get to know you. And then we hear the same voice, clear as day. Woman's voice. Really? Just like that, with an inflection and everything. Like, full question. And we continued to speak with this woman. We were unable to completely identify what her name was. But for our first ever out as a team experience, it was amazing because we honestly didn't know what we were going to get. But I'm trying to think of one other really good personal experience. Alright, so this last experience is one that I've only shared with a few people. But growing up, you're really susceptible, I believe, at a young age. And me in particular, I always had a feeling like I could tell when something else was in the room, or when you felt like something was watching you, whatever it may be. But I used to have, in my room growing up, I had 2 windows. I had one large window that looked out onto the lawn, the front lawn, and my other window looked out onto the side of the house. And after this particular night, I never slept facing my door again. But my door was always shut also. But I was laying in bed, and something woke me up. It was like something tickled my face. And I remember looking up from my sleep and seeing the shadow of what appeared to be a very large woman in a cloak. And I immediately, I froze. I was 10 years old, maybe 10 or 11. And I completely froze. And I remember feeling cold to the point where I think if I could have had a light on, I'm pretty sure I could have saw my own breath. I mean, it was so cold. And I took my the large portion of my blankets that were on my bed, and I covered my entire face and tucked it into the side, so only my mouth was really exposed, so I couldn't see anything. But I still continued to feel something tickling my face. And so after I felt that again, I just shoved my head all the way under the covers and did everything I could at that point to keep any of my skin inside of my blanket. I mean, if you could see me right now, I have goosebumps just thinking about this story all over my legs and my arms right now. But that was one of my biggest experiences when I was young. But that's kind of what drives me. When you look back and you've had those kinds of experiences for yourself, and you try to explain that to someone else, it's hard. Especially when they look at you funny, or it's okay to be skeptic and maybe to not understand, but when people make fun of you for the things that you have experienced or the things that you talk about, it makes it more difficult for you to want to share anything with them in the future. And I had other experiences after that, but the way that my experience was received by others, I just kept them to myself. Now I was just crazy. I was just seeing things. I was just feeling things. I was scared. It was late. All of the excuses that we all try to give ourselves during those kinds of events. But the feeling that I get from helping people in their homes with different cases, there's nothing like that feeling. I've been able to verify stories that people have told about their homes. I've been able to verify things that were seen by the owners of homes as they were children, and they are now grown in their 30s and 40s. I've been able to help a father make contact with his own father, and so many others. But those simple experiences are beautiful. It's a welcoming feeling. It's a happy feeling. There is a scripture in, I believe it's in Galatians or Ephesians. It's called the fruits of the Spirit. And it talks about all of the things that good spirits can produce. Good feelings, good emotions, how they can only bring forth good, and they cannot produce a bad experience for someone. Let me just check and see what the actual scripture says. Just one second. Okay, I just found it. So it's in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Against such there is no law. When you are at an investigation and you are trying to communicate or trying to discover what it is that is going on with the spirit, maybe it needs help, maybe it's not able to move forward. What is it that's keeping you there? What is it that's keeping it there? But when you feel love and peace when you are speaking to a spirit, there is no greater feeling. It is greater than people will compare. Like, oh, I love getting scared, or oh, it gets cold, or oh, I can see my breath. But when you feel the love and thankfulness of a spirit that is there, that needs your help, that needs your guidance to help it move on, or just to help it speak with a loved one, there is no greater feeling in the world. But that is what drives me to do this, to help others. I really hope you have all enjoyed this particular session that we have had today. I know it's not like anything that I normally do. Normally I just have either stories prepared to tell you, or I have some awesome guests that I am ready to talk to or interview and hear about all of their different experiences. But I really wanted to be able to take this as a personal time, as a personal note, to allow you to get to know me, who I am, what I do, what I love. And it has been a great experience to be able to open up to all of you and share this with you. And I hope that all of you are doing well during this time. I know it's still rough out there. I know it's hard to go outside. I know it's hard for many to go to work, and there's many of us that have no choice. But know that we are always here for you. We love you. We appreciate you. And our thoughts and love go out to you. Thank you all again. And remember, there's no normal like the paranormal. This has been Ben with Lost Souls. You have a good night.